Okay, so my name is Robert Daugherty, and today my presentation is going to be on Vicki Dawn Jackson, Texas's Angel of Death. I didn't find much on her childhood, but when she was young, she watched her great grandmother die and decided she wanted to help people, basically like Florence Nightingale. She read a book on her in a library, and that's when she decided she wanted to be like her. Since she was a junior in high school, she had been a nurse or nurse's aide. Not much was found regarding her parents, except that her father was a self-employed mechanic, and her parents lived across the street from her and took care of her two kids while she was working, before they decided to move back to Indiana to take care of her dying grandfather. She graduated high school in May of 1984. She wanted to enroll in a junior college to become a licensed vocational nurse, but got pregnant within 6 months and had to put that on hold. In 1989, she finally became an LVN, and the Nocona Nursing Home administrators promoted her to night shift. This was before she started working at the Nocona Hospital. She married Leroy Carson, who, just like her father, was a self-employed mechanic, in May of 1985, and moved into a house across the street from her parents. After the birth of her son Curtis, she became pregnant again and gave birth to her daughter Jennifer in 1986. She began going to nursing school part-time a year later, and then in 1994 Leroy moved out. They divorced 2 years after he moved out, and very shortly after the divorce she became married to a guy named Kirk Jackson and got custody of her kids, but Kirk was abusive and beat on him a lot, so they moved back in with her father. She drove a beige four-door Buick. At the time of the incidents, her murders, she was 34 years old. She owned 25 nurses' uniforms, all of which she pressed on hangers in her bedroom closet at her house on the poor side of town. I guess having them pressed on hangers and stuff could be considered like OCD or something. But when she went to the local Dairy Queen, an hour or so before shift began, she was always dressed in one of her uniforms, and she always ate by herself in one of the back booths. Her hair was dyed in her kitchen sink with Lady Carell pale blonde, and was neatly brushed and pulled back into a little knot. She was a nurse in her tiny hometown hospital in Nocona. I guess I'm pronouncing that right. Where she cared for her patients and won praises from her supervisors. Just about everyone knew her, and she also worked nights at the hospital. She bathed the residents, fed them, inserted their catheters, gave them their medications, bandaged their wounds, and held their hands when they were aching from pain. She'd always make it a point to visit her patients when her shift began to make sure they didn't need anything. The people she murdered were basically townspeople that she had known, neighbors that lived a few blocks away from her and her parents, people she cared for in the nursing home that she worked at, and some that she knew since she was a teenager. I didn't find much on her friends, but one of her former friends, Nancy Burnett, Nancy's father was murdered by Vicki during her little spree of killings. The only abuse I found was that she suffered a miscarriage after fighting with Kirk, and that was in 2000. She told Jennifer, when Jennifer was older, that she had visited a psychiatrist who diagnosed her of having bipolar disorder. And I talk about that a little later in here as what I believe played a part in it. On December 11th, she filled a syringe with mivacarium chloride. It paralyzes the respiratory system for a short time. And she began walking up and down the hospital hallway looking for patients to kill. She injected the chloride into a woman one night that was her own age, and then another night into a teenage girl who went to high school with her children. She as well killed her husband's grandfather, then attended the funeral while bringing potato salad for the reception. From December 11th, 2000 to February 18th, 2001, she had murdered 10 patients, most likely killed another 10, and attempted 5 more. And the other 10 and attempted 5 more, according to law enforcement. The first 10 patients that was murdered, that's a fact. They think she killed another 10. This isn't the full breakdown, but it's the most I could find on it. From December 2000 to January 2001, there was 8 deaths in 11 days among patients. January 24th, a 95-year-old woman died, and they believe that Vicky played part in that as well. January 30th, the hospital officials knew that one of the vials was taken from the trash carts on the overnight shift, and between the 30th and 31st, it triggered the faculty's internal investigation. In June of 2001, they began exhuming the bodies of the 10 people who have died to check for traces of the chloride. And then in July 2002, she was arrested at a grocery store in Bowie, where she got a job working in the deli department, making sandwiches and other things. July 18th, she was indicted for 10 deaths. She pled no contest on October 3rd of 2006, and October 5th, she was sentenced to life. As I stay right here, I say she was organized because she worked at the hospital, so she had free range to basically go wherever she wanted and practically do whatever she wanted. She worked nights, so there wasn't many people there. Because the deaths were mostly elderly patients, they weren't considered suspicious until administration realized that vials of the chloride were missing. She basically had everything planned out when she walked up and down the hallways looking for victims. She filled the vial up, or not the vial, the syringe, sorry. And she knew what to use, she knew where it was located, she knew how to use it, where to inject it, and she really left nothing behind except for the fact that the administrators realized that some of the vials were missing. So I think she'd be considered an organized serial killer. Theory-wise, she wasn't considered a mercy killer. She didn't target people terminally ill or suffering. She wasn't an emotionally disturbed nurse who tried to play the heroine by basically trying to kill the patients and then reviving them. So the theory I chose was routine activity theory. And in the book, it states that everyday situations that offer opportunities for victimization and present more casual factors. This includes the fact that targets must be available, guardians must be absent, and the offender must be motivated to commit the crime. She worked at the hospital, and people were, laid up in their beds and stuff, so that's availability of targets. Night shift, they don't have any visitors, so that gives her plenty of opportunity for guardians to be absent. And she took the syringe and filled it up, so right there's plenty motivation. For my discussion and conclusion, I talk about the bipolar disorder again. I believe that due to her being bipolar, or also it could have been a burnout factor because of the fact that she was a nurse, long hours, having to deal with a bunch of people, just everything, a combination of everything really could have led her to decide that she was going to kill the patients, and her being a nurse, she had the best weapon possible that wouldn't lead back to her. As I state, her opportunity from her being a nurse and the fact that she stated she was bipolar is some of my facts that support my stance. I believe if the hospital did have a better security system, if there were more guards present, or even more nurses or doctors that work night shift, or even if they had camera system put in place, then she could have been stopped. She could have either been stopped before she killed him or after she killed him. I mean, I hate to say after, but either way, I think she could have been stopped if they had a better security system. And Then right here is my references, and I got them listed right there. I guess that's legible. And I also have these on a separate sheet if I need to send in a separate sheet as well. And that does it for my presentation. Thank you for listening.